Hello and welcome to the API Management and API Center community stand-up. It's our second stand-up. We are excited to have you here today. Just for your benefit, this stand-up is a way for us to present our opinion on the latest and most important trends in the API industry, share what's new in Azure API Management and API Center so you can reap the benefits of the features that we have just released and may accelerate your API programs, increase productivity, or unblock certain scenarios. It's also a way for you to ask questions about product or provide feedback to us directly to the product group behind our API and API Center products, as well as connect and learn from other customers and users of API Management and API Center platforms. Today, we are going to kick it off with a short section about security, why API security is important and why you need to care about it and what you can do about it. And then we'll dive deeper into some of the new capabilities in our products, both API Center and API Management. The topic of the day today is how to manage the consumption of AI APIs with Azure API Management. So we have just released a series of cool features that help you manage and control and observe that consumption. And we see it as a very rising scenario that's becoming more and more adopted by all organizations worldwide. And we'll close the session with a Q&A section, and feel free to ask any questions throughout the live stream as well as at the end as we close up the whole session today. All right, on the topic of API security, it's a ever increasingly more and more important topic for organizations of all sizes. Not only the number of data breaches is increasing every year, so is the cost of data breaches and the number of data breaches that are happening through the vector of APIs. So API attacks are becoming one of the most common, if not the most common, attack vector for organizations. And these attacks can be hard to detect, can be hard to prevent, can be hard to mitigate. And I just want to take a minute to tell you what you can do in Azure API Management and API Center and other products to help you mitigate those attacks as they're happening on your platform. So first of all, Azure API Management provides a lot of capabilities and features and mechanisms and controls to help you prevent against those attacks or mitigate them as they're happening live. Some of these controls are very basic, such as authentication or authorization, whether you're using certificates, managed identity, tokens, subscription keys that we offer in our platform. These are some authentication authorization mechanisms. Others are a little more complex. For example, we have a set of validation policies. The validation policies allow you to validate JSON and XML schemas against what's defined in your API specification. They also allow you to validate parameters of the requests, as well as headers of requests and responses. You can also validate response status code to make sure you don't leak any confidential information that shouldn't be leaked. Even stack traces can be considered confidential. In addition to that, you can also block excessive requests or responses, so those that exceed certain size limit that you defined for a specific endpoint or a certain condition on your APIs. In addition to validation policies, we also have a set of other policies, for example, for GraphQL, to limit the depth of GraphQL query. And we also have many other different controls, for example, IP filtering that you can use to block certain users or allow only specific users to access your APIs. And what I'm driving at is that we have a comprehensive documentation how you can use those different controls in Azure API Management to protect your APIs from OWASP API Top 10 security threats. OWASP API Top 10 is an industry-wide and standardized and widely acknowledged set of threats that can impact your APIs and can cause vulnerabilities in your APIs that may lead to cyber attacks and cyber incidents. This documentation that we have published around a couple of years ago or a year ago, is now being revised to the new OWASP API top 10 list that was published just a few months ago. So a lot of these controls are still specific and still apply to your APIs, but you also see in a few weeks probably is a revised documentation that will talk to the new categorization of OWASP API top 10 threats. But API management aside, a good API security is an in-depth defense. So you need to protect your APIs across all the components of the stack. And that includes other complementary services that we offer that integrate with Azure API management. For example, Azure Monitor has a very good system for logs and metrics, and you can even define certain rules and trigger alerts based on metrics or logs. You can, of course, use private networking products such as Azure Virtual Network or VPN to connect to restrict connectivity to your APIs and backends. You can use web application firewall on top of your API management, such as application gateway or front door, to mitigate against common attacks such as SQL injection. There's also other services such as DDoS protection service, Azure Key Vault for secret management, Azure Policy for enforcing and monitoring compliance of your API management services, identity management with Microsoft Entra, and Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Microsoft Defender for Cloud is an advanced API security solution that we released as generally available last year. It offers a lot of advanced mechanisms specifically for API security, especially around inventory management and around detection of threats as they're happening live on your APIs and prioritization of those threats. However, the remediation of those threats still happens in API management with, for example, policies such as restricting certain users from calling your APIs, applying a temporary rate limit policy to throttle requests, and so on. And last but not least, we also have Azure API Center, which is a great service to inventory all of your APIs for the purpose of governance and also for the purpose of API security as well. Because without the full inventory of your API portfolio, you cannot secure all of your APIs. And with that, I would like to hand it off to Julia to talk about API Center in more detail.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mike. Hi, everyone. My name is Julia, and I'm the product manager on Azure API Center. If this is your first time hearing about Azure API Center, let's quickly recap what Azure API Center actually is. So API Center is a brand new Azure service. We actually just went GA this year in May, and it's been an incredible journey. Since then, we've worked with a lot of Microsoft internal teams, but also external customers to validate some of the features we are currently offering in Azure API Center. We really want to make sure that whatever we are providing works for all of our customers out there. So it's been super helpful and super interesting to learn from them. And today you will hear and learn a little bit more what we have been working on so far, but also what's on our roadmap. All right, so in one sentence, what is Azure API Center? API Center is an API inventory solution that will help with API governance, discovery, and consumption. We don't care where your API is deployed. It can be in Azure, it can be in a different cloud, it can be on-prem, it can even be in any kind of lifecycle stage. Just go and register your APIs in API Center. We have lots of docs and blogs out there, so if you're interested in the product itself, definitely make sure to check these out. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about more recent news, right? So today, I want to talk about 3 topic areas where we've made some progress, but also give you an update on these different areas. So today we're going to talk about API inventory and some of the things we have been working on there. We're going to talk about API governance and what we've been doing with our features there. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about a very new exciting feature that will bring API management and API Center better together. All right, so let's get right into some news in the inventory area. So after talking to a lot of our customers, we've realized that with Azure API Center being a new product, customers still need some guidance around here. What is Azure API Center? When should organizations use API management? When should they use API management and API Center together? And maybe even what are some of the key features for both of these products, right? So that's why we recently published a blog post exactly to address these topic areas. So if you or your customers have some of the same questions, right, make sure to check out the blog post, but also definitely always feel free to reach out to me as well. All right. Azure API Center is a tool for API admins and API developers. So in a very short video, we wanted to address the dynamic between API admins and API developers here. And this has been posted on YouTube. So if that is something you're interested in, what could be a scenarios where we have API admins in our organization, APIs developers, and how they can work better together, especially using API Center, definitely make sure to check it out. In this video, we quickly explain, of course, API Center, some of the core functionalities, but also how developers and API admins can work together with some of the features we currently offer. Yeah, and then last but not least, automation has been a core piece of Azure API Center, right? You want to build out your inventory of APIs, especially if you think of APIs from a big scale perspective. You want to automate the process. You ideally want to bring in as many APIs as possible. So automation is truly adoption or one of the things how they best can adopt to API Center. So that's why we will release a new video. Actually, it's scheduled for today on how organizations can use API Center together with GitHub Actions. So let's think you want to quickly register an API that you have pushed to your GitHub repository. And we will cover what this means and how you can bring your API from your GitHub repository, what the process looks like from merging to when will the GitHub action actually be triggered. So this is something in this short video you can learn and you can see. In addition to that, we have also posted some documentation, of course, so you can quickly just set this up yourself and see how this works. Automation, it's not just about your APIs. It's also about how can you automate the process of custom metadata. Custom metadata is a concept in API Center, and it essentially means you want to store additional information on top of your APIs. So as well for the registration of APIs, automating the process of getting these metadata into API Center is also very fundamental. So the same in the video, we are also talking about how you can automate the process of updating, changing your custom metadata there as well. So yeah, definitely make sure to check it out. All right, so we talked about some news on the API inventory piece. So let's talk about some news on or in the area of API governance. So for this, I actually have a very exciting video that I would like to share. So I'm going to kick off the video around or some news in the area of API governance. API governance. Well, let's quickly recap what we mean with that and how this fits into Azure API Center. API governance is the practice of defining and applying standards or policies to ensure that organizational APIs are consistent, standardized, usable, and secure. In Azure API Center, we offer a feature called API Analysis. With API Analysis, you can enable API linting to analyze uploaded API definitions based on a set of predefined rules. Previously, customers had to go through a set of steps to enable API analysis. We had dependencies on an Azure function and an events integration. But after chatting with a lot of our customers, we realized that this is an adoption blocker for API analysis. And because API governance is a super popular feature, we decided to provide this out of the box for any API Center customer. We currently have a private preview available, and this is how it works. Via the VS Code extension, customers moving forward are able to find a new folder called Rules. If they right-click on this folder, they will find an action called Enable API Analysis. After they clicked on this action, we will enable API analysis for this specific API center. Customers don't have to worry about any additional resources. We will manage everything for them. As soon as I click on the rule set YAML file, I'm able to see the current rules used for this API center. Of course, I can also modify these rules. I will go ahead and provide updated rules. The nice thing about the VS Code extension is, in addition to a rule set YAML file, we also support custom functions. After I configured these rules and before deploying them back to my API center, I want to test them locally first. I will open an OpenAPI specification. And because my active style guide has automatically been set to these rules, I'm now able to see the same error or warning message that I would get in the Azure portal. I can go ahead and change my OpenAPI spec to see if these error messages will disappear. Or I can also locally test if, whenever changing something in my rule set, what will happen with my OpenAPI spec. After I've tested my rules, I now want to deploy my new rules. Via the VS Code extension, you are also able to quickly deploy these rules to your Azure API Center. Now, let's see what this looks like in action. I will quickly register a new API using the VS Code extension by providing a bunch of information needed and by also uploading an example OpenAPI spec. Let's switch to the Azure portal experience. In the API Analysis tab, I'm now able to find my linting results. As mentioned before, this is currently out in private preview. If you're interested in testing this yourself, please make sure to sign up for our private preview. The team is also currently working on a fully integrated Azure portal experience so that in the future, customers will be able to have a rule management experience in the portal as well. Awesome, yeah. As I mentioned in the video, we are super excited about this feature as we do think this will change or help a lot of customers struggling with setting up API linting in the first place or API analysis. And also looking at the popularity of the feature, API governance over the last couple of years has been increased in organizations and they really want to take something or do something about it. So with API Center, we are now providing a tool that will help organizations to tangle the problem of API governance here. As I mentioned, we are in private preview out there. We are looking at a public preview release probably sometime in September. But if you can't wait to test this out, definitely make sure to sign up for the private preview. It's super easy to install. I keep joking with our internal teams about, oh, you probably don't need more than 5 minutes to set this up, even for the private preview. So if that's something you just kind of want to check out and test, feel free to reach out there too. All right, let's look at our last item and the latest news around API management and API Center. And for this as well, I do have another video to show. Azure API Center and API management better together. Currently, we have support for importing APIs from API management into API Center using our Azure API Center CLI. We want to provide a much better and more integrated experience in API Center. That's why we have invested in a new feature capability called API Management and API Center Synchronization. Rather than just importing APIs into API management, we want to provide a way where API Center customers can somewhat subscribe to an API management instance. This means that all APIs in API management will just show up in API Center without having to write any scripts or to regularly import APIs from APIM. Source of truth will stay in API management, and changes made in API management will also be reflected in API Center. Let's take a look at a possible user journey experience. Please note that these designs might be subject to change. In the future, via the Environments tab, customers will be able to see a feature called Linked Environments. Via a button called New Linked Environment, users will be able to start the configuration. They will select which APIM instance they would like to link and also provide a possible lifecycle stage the APIs should be imported in. It will be visible what APIs have been linked from an APIM instance, because some functionalities like editing built-in metadata won't be available in API Center, because for these, the source of truth will stay and will be in API management. We are currently rolling out a private preview, so make sure to sign up to be part of it. Awesome, perfect. Yeah. So today we talked about our 3 layers, about some of the news that we have seen in the API inventory, governance, but also API management and API Center synchronization. So before I'm handing it back over to Mike, just as a summary, what are some of the things? Make sure to sign up for the private previews if you're interested. Feedback or questions are always welcome. Make sure to reach out and check out our blog posts, our YouTube videos. And now back to you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia, for exciting presentation. If you don't mind, I'll bring you back to the stage for a second. We have a question about
Sure, yeah.
API Center. Will API Center replace the developer portal?
Good question. So we definitely have a discovery and consumption journey in API Center currently. API Center currently focuses on internal use cases. Internal developers, of course, you can register also externally APIs, but if you think about discovering, consuming these, as of right now, API Center is looking at internal developers. So whenever I'm having conversations with customers who would like to expose these APIs to external people, I would always recommend going to API management and the developer portal. API Center, as I mentioned, we have a discovery journey mainly focused on the VS Code extension right now. We have an open source template, but API Center, as of right now, doesn't come with a built-in portal as well. So if you're looking for a discovery journey in VS Code, or if you want to build out your own portal using our open source template here, this is the way to go. But also, of course, depending on the use cases, and if you want to expose them to external, I would always refer to our friends on API management here.
Perfect. Thank you, Joyce. I think it's also important to know that API Center is much more than discovery itself. It offers you so many other benefits and so much value in addition to API discovery. So I wouldn't say it's a replacement at all. It's a complementary, fully complementary product. And thank you for... Oh, there's another question from EPIM Hot Rod. Why did you pick up Spectral as the linting engine?
Awesome. Yeah, I love that as some people saw that we are using Spectral under the hood. So Spectral is an open source linting engine. And after talking to a lot of external customers, but also Microsoft internal teams, it seems like that Spectral has been one of the very popular linting engines. Moving forward, we will still support bring your own linting engine. I think in the demo you saw there's still a way for you to configure your own Azure function to set this up via the events integration. So if you don't want to use Spectral, there's still other ways to integrate your linting engine of choice to API Center. Moving forward, and currently with the private preview, just after seeing a lot of customers having adopted with this and it also being open source, that's why we picked Spectral. Also, if you think about how you define these rules, a lot of customers do really like the format of YAML file. You can customize it with the custom functions. So it does cover a lot of the needs we have seen across these organizations.
Right, and if there are any engines that you are specifically interested in that are not Spectral, please let us know. We are open to suggestions and feedback. So anything that you would like to see in API Center, feel free to reach out to us, and especially Julia. Right, thank you, Julia. And now we're going to jump into the API management section, which will be presented by a bunch of API management PMs, as well as we have a guest, Alexandre, from the field of Microsoft. And we have several exciting topics for you. And we'll kick it off with the developer portal updates with Shrikant.
Thank you, Mike. So the first topic that we want to talk about is developer portal. I want to talk about some of the new features that we are launching in developer portal. The first one being our WordPress plugin. So background to this is the fact that our customers wanted more customizability. The customers want to be able to have developer portal be available in different languages, things like localization, things like collapsing menus and having custom style sheets. Right? To enable this functionality, we are working with App Service on WordPress, since WordPress is the most popular content management system. We picked WordPress. It's highly flexible, highly customizable. It's got a rich ecosystem of plugins that our customers can use. And further, WordPress on App Service is hosted and managed by Azure. So as a developer, as a customer, you don't have to host any solution. It is managed. It's highly well documented. We have created a plugin for WordPress on App Service, and we are making the plugin available in open source mode. Here is the link for that, AKMS APM WordPress, where you can go read the documentation and download the plugin and use it. Let me show you a quick video of how this plugin shows up. So I'll show you a quick demo of how this plugin looks from an administrator API manager angle and how it looks from API developer angle, and how it can help you customize your portal. Let me show you a quick video.
We're going to show you a quick demo of how, using WordPress and App Service, API managers can build and customize the API Management Developer Portal. To start with, I will create an app service and set it up with a WordPress template. I will go into the specific WordPress administrator site and install the API Management plugin. Now let us log in as a developer. The first step is to sign in using Azure Active Directory. Once this is done, it brings back all the API and product information from the API Management Service. Let us review the list of the API. I can now select any API and view its details, including the list of operations and the API schema. Let's pick the Echo API. We have rendered the API details using Swagger. I can also do a quick test by providing the subscription key. Now, let us navigate to the list of the products and select a specific product. We can see the list of the subscriptions and create new subscription. Now, let us navigate to the Profile tab. Here, we can see a list of all the subscriptions and account details. In addition to this, we have enabled features like localization using other WordPress plugins. For example, I can change this developer portal to a French language very easily just by adding the G-Translate plugin. Now, let us navigate to the WordPress administrator interface, where API managers can easily change themes and layouts for the developer portal. For example, I can add any custom style sheet to the selected theme. In summary, building a new developer portal and customizing it are simple and easy using the Azure API Management plugin for WordPress.
Yeah, you can sign up for the plugin using the open source plugin link that I provided. Next up, we're going to show you a new feature that we are launching. This feature is about tracking your developer activity. We are enabling audit logging. Why this is needed, right? If you want to know how successful your API program is, you want to know how your developer accounts are increasing, which APIs are more active, which APIs are being used quite a bit, how often do folks use testing to test a particular API, things like that. And further, some customers want to maintain audit logs, audit trails of developer activities. For this, we are launching a new feature to enable our customers to get all the activity and to create these dashboards so that we can actually track which APIs are successful, which operations are most successful, and ensure the success of the API program all up. Let me show you a quick video of how this is enabled today, and then I will talk through the demo. So we enabled it through the diagnostic settings. You can actually add a new diagnostic setting and select that you want to enable logs to developer portal usage. You can send it to a log analytics workspace or a storage account. Once you save the diagnostic setting, the logs automatically, in this case, start flowing to the log analytics workspace. I'll log in as a developer and click on the Echo API, for example. I'll go into select a particular operation, whether it is modifying a resource or creating a new resource. Now I come to the log analytics workspace. I'll see all the logs and have a complete audit trail. For example, I want to see which APIs are being used and which APIs have been used in the last 24 hours. I can get a quick chart by API. I can also see a quick count of which operations are most successful. So I'll run a quick query, and I'm able to see which operations, like how many times was create operation called in the last 24 hours, things like that. So this feature is available in general availability today, and you can actually use it to monitor the success of your API program. Back to Mike.
Thank you, Shrikant. And I would like to invite Andrei and Alex to talk about Gen AI. Let me add you to the stage, Andrei and Alex.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Right, let's talk about generative AI. So first of all, why generative AI? Like, we have a lot of customers who are experimenting with applications. They're building applications, new type of applications, which we call intelligent applications that utilize LLMs or specifically Azure OpenAI to build new experiences that were not possible before. And starting with single app integration, Azure really simplifies connecting your intelligent applications to Azure OpenAI. You just deploy Azure OpenAI instance, you import SDK of your choice, and you get the key from the OpenAI instance, and you're ready to go. You can send prompts to OpenAI endpoint, and you can receive completions in response. And this is really easy to do in Azure. But what if you want to scale your application or go production and onboard more applications to leverage Azure OpenAI? And now you can have multiple applications calling single OpenAI endpoint. Or on the other hand, you might have demand for using more than one OpenAI instance. And that comes with certain challenges. For example, how can I track token usage across multiple applications? How can I do cross charges to multiple departments that use Azure OpenAI, multiple teams, multiple applications within my organization? Or how can I make sure that one application doesn't consume the whole quota, leaving other applications with no option to use LLM models and basically breaking the user experience for other applications? When you use Azure OpenAI, you have a single API key for your endpoint. How can I make sure that this key is securely distributed across multiple applications or multiple teams? Should I even use API key in that case? And when I have multiple OpenAI endpoints, how can I distribute load across those? Is there a way to make sure that my pre-purchased instances of OpenAI are utilized first before I fall back to kind of a regular pay-as-you-go instances? And this is where Azure API Management comes into play. And basically, to address these challenges, we introduced Gen AI Gateway capabilities in May 2024. And these are new features, or set of features, should I say, which are built specifically for Azure OpenAI use cases to address common scenarios that I mentioned previously. So the first one is Azure OpenAI token metric policy. So being between your applications and Azure OpenAI API, Azure API Management can capture the token usage and send these metrics to application insights. We've made it very easy to configure with a simple policy where all you need is to specify the namespace that you want to use to store those metrics, and set the dimensions to break down the usage by subscription keys used in API Management, by IP address, or any other arbitrary key that you can use to identify different consumers of your Azure OpenAI APIs. And that also allows you to do cross charges later on based on token consumption per application, development team, department, and so on. The second set of features are load balancer and circuit breaker. These features allow you to define a pool of Azure OpenAI endpoints to distribute traffic and set up failover conditions using the circuit breaker pattern. In addition to round-robin load balancing rules that we had for a while, we added priority-based and weighted-based load balancing algorithms. And this is specifically important because when you use dedicated capacity allocated through so-called provision throughput units, or PTUs, in Azure OpenAI, and you want to have a pay-as-you-go instance as a failover endpoint, you can configure it in the following priorities. So let's PTU has priority 1, and then pay-as-you-go has priority 2. So in that case, you use all of the allocated capacity first, and then you fail over to pay-as-you-go. Now, when it comes to authentication and authorization, Azure OpenAI uses API keys as an authentication mechanism. And with Azure API Management, you don't need to share these keys with your API consumers anymore. Instead, you can set up a managed identity authentication with Azure OpenAI. So in that case, your developers or your applications, they will use subscription keys in API Management, and they will not be able to get access directly to Azure OpenAI endpoints. And the last one is that I wanted to mention, not the last one, but one of the most important ones is the token limit policy. So this policy allows you to configure tokens per minute limits based on the counter key. And counter key is something which represents your, as I mentioned, your application, consumer, and it can be anything. It can be subscription ID, IP address, or anything else, because we support policy expression there. So you can now say that, for example, this application A that is not currently in production can use, for example, 3,000 TPMs or tokens per minute, while applications which are in production, they may use up to 70,000 TPMs. We have two different modes in which this policy operates today. In first mode, we get the usage from the OpenAI response, and we increase the counter based on the information from the response. And the second mode configures Azure API management to pre-calculate prompt tokens before sending the request, which is kind of a more safer and more strict option when it comes to throttling. And the last policy that we introduced during build, which is currently in preview, is Azure OpenAI semantic caching policy. So this policy allows you to improve the performance of your applications and lower the token consumption by caching semantically similar prompts. So Azure API Management leverages Redis cache and Azure OpenAI embeddings model to generate vectors that represent the prompt. And if there is a completion stored for a semantically similar prompt, Azure API Management will return it from cache without hitting the Azure OpenAI backend. And you can configure how similar two prompts should be using a score threshold parameter in the policy, and also vary by key that represents kind of groups by which APIM should cache the responses. For example, you can have different products, different subscriptions, and so on. And now with that, let me hand it over to Alex to demonstrate those policies in action.
Thank you, Andrei. Hello, everyone. So let's see if you, okay, you can see my screen already. So in this demo, I will show you that is really easy to add the new OpenAI API into Azure API Management and benefit from the amazing Gen AI features that Andrei just introduced. So we start by creating a new Azure API Management service, or just open an existing one like I have it here, okay? So from here, we will just need to navigate to the APIs blade, where we'll see our APIs in our API Management Service instance. And if we go a little bit down here, we will see this new option that is to create a new API from an existing Azure OpenAI service, okay? So I will just select this option here. And the first thing that it will ask is which Azure OpenAI instance do I want to use from my subscription. You can see that I have a lot of them. I will just pick one randomly, and then I will select what is the API version from the Azure OpenAI service. By default, it presents the latest stable one, and generally is the one that I want to use, but I can customize this if needed. Then I will pick it a name. Okay, OpenAI is just fine for the name of the API, but I can have like any custom name that I want, a custom description, and then I should click on this checkbox to improve SDK compatibility whenever I want to have OpenAI SDKs or other SDKs like LangChain or Semantic Kernel to work out of the box with this API being served by API Management. Then we have the option to associate this API with products on API Management. And then I'm able to configure the policies some of the policies that Andrei just mentioned. For now, we have these two, okay, two very important ones. The one allows me to do a rate limit, not based on requests. That kind of policy we had it on API Management for a while already. This one is more advanced because it allows me to do a rate limit based on token usage. So it understands how much tokens were consumed, and it can limit the number of tokens consumed by request property. Okay, so it supports these two request properties, IP address and subscription. Generally, we want to use subscription because each client application will use their own API Management subscription, and it's a great mechanism then to set quotas, to set limits about how many tokens the application is allowed to use. Then we have the second policy, okay? By just clicking here, we can track the token usage. So what this does is that it connects to the Azure Application Insights resource that is associated with the Azure API Management instance. By default, it lists that, but we can choose another one if needed. And then the metrics will be sent to Application Insights. And we can leverage custom dimensions from Application Insights. And in this case, we understand that subscription ID, it's a dimension that makes sense because client applications will be identified by the subscription, and we want to use the subscription ID as a dimension. But we can use other dimensions as well, like, for example, the user ID or the product ID, a lot of different options, and it can even have a custom one if needed. So I will just pick subscription ID for now, and I will continue. And I have here this summary screen with all the information, all the configuration. And the highlight here is that this configuration will leverage the Microsoft Entra ID authentication and the managed identities between the Azure API Management and the Azure OpenAI service. This means that I don't need to use any keys from the Azure OpenAI service. We know that when we use the keys from the services, we need to rotate them, we need to manage them. And this is a keyless approach that Azure is handling the identities between both services and maintaining everything secure. So I will push and create the API. In a few seconds, this API will be created in my Azure API Management instance. And I can see here that I see a lot of operations that OpenAI API expose. And if I go to settings, I can see here in the bottom that the header name was changed to API key. This is, again, to guarantee total compatibility with the SDKs and to guarantee that by putting API management in the middle, there is nothing breaks, okay? Seamless integration by having API management in the middle. What changes is that we need to specify the new endpoint. Will not be the OpenAI endpoint, will be the API management endpoint, okay? And just by doing that, we can leverage all the policies that we have configured through that wizard and all the additional policies that Azure API Management provides, okay? And from here, I can leverage the Azure Copilot and author new policies to change the behavior for according my needs, okay? So I'm confident that this could work, but it will be nice to do a simple test to make sure. So I go here and I select an operation, in this case to create a chat completion. I just need to fill in what is the deployment ID, and I will fill in the API version as well. And then I should put a sample request, okay? In this case, a very basic request. I will ask, what is Azure API Management? So I will fire away this test through the testing console, and I will wait for the response. And as I was expecting, I get 200 response code. Everything is okay. I can see important information here, like the region where the response from Azure OpenAI came, in this case, UK South. And I can see also the content from the response. Okay, I see a very long explanation about what is Azure API Management. I can see the content filters provided by the RAI and the responsible AI content filters to understand if anything was filtered. And also I can check the token usage, okay? So that I be confident about how many tokens were consumed with this API call. So with this, I'm ready to share this with developers to start developing intelligent apps using API management. But before that, I should create a subscription. So I have two mechanisms to create a subscription. I created a subscription here directly for my app X, or I can use the developer portal that we just mentioned before to have a self-service experience for the subscription. I will just create it here directly, and then I have the subscription, and from here I have the ability to share the keys with the developer so that they start using the API. So I will now switch gears to the VS Code, imagining that I'm a developer and I'm testing those policies, and I wanted to check if the policies are well configured. And I will start with the token rate limiting. So we have provided a set of labs to test those policies, and they are based on Jupyter notebooks, and they are really easy for us to test this. So basically, in this one, I will do a bunch of requests, okay? And I will start here to fire away the request, and I can start to see the responses coming from the OpenAI service. And my expectation here is that while I start to consume the tokens, after a while, I will start to get rate limiting, okay? And generally, when we have a rate limiting, we have this famous status code, 429 status code. That means that the server is busy, that is rate limiting the requests, okay? So in this case, I'm using a direct HTTP call to the service in order to get that behavior, okay? Because one thing to get in mind is when we use the SDK will do retries automatically, and we will not see the status code 429, it will be hidden from us. But here I can see that after getting a lot of 200 status codes, now I have a 429, and if I analyze this in a plot, I can see this results in a graph, understanding when the rate limit kicks in. Okay, so it was counting the tokens until reach a threshold that I've configured, and then started to give 429s again. And the difference, when I use the OpenAI Python SDK, this is the SDK. When I start to call this, I will not see the 429 because it will do the retries automatically here, but the behavior from Azure API management will be the same. It will do the rate limits, and it will guarantee that will not exceed the quota defined, okay? Another lab is the token metrics emitting. Okay, we will want to count the tokens that were used by each app. Okay, and in this case, I'm using different subscriptions. Okay, different subscriptions meaning different API keys. That's why I know that they are different subscriptions, and from this, it generates in application insights a nice chart, so I can see here the responses from these different subscriptions. And if I go to the application insights for this resource, in here, I can plot this kind of graphs to see over time the amount of tokens that were consumed by each subscription. In this case, I have subscription 1, 2, and 3, simple example, and I can see over time how many tokens they were consumed, okay? So I can then use Who's to Query language to do advanced scenarios and to count exactly with this kind of queries to count the tokens, and then I can export this information wherever I want, okay? Andrei mentioned also this capability. This is not a policy. It's a built-in capability of the backend properties. So we had backends for a while, but now we have a special backend that is a pool of backends. Basically, it will group the backends, and with this, we can use it for OpenAI resources, but it's in fact useful for any kind of endpoint because we can do this load balancing built-in with API management. We don't need a load balancer between API management and the backends. And with just by configuring this, we have the circuit breaking functionality, and we have the load balancing, where we can specify also priority and weights. So in this small example, I will do a bunch of requests with the load balancing configuration. And what I want to test here is that the requests will be distributed to different regions. I can see here that the first request went to France Central, the other will go to UK South. And here in this case, I set the weight of 80% to UK, 10% to France Central, 10% to Sweden. Okay, so we can do all these sorts of configuration according our requirements. We can have, in this case, we might have like a PTU in UK South, so most of the traffic should be in UK, and we might have pay-as-you-go instances in other regions as well. So, and after doing this, of course, this is a small example, we can have a much more advanced one. We will want to analyze the load balancing results just to make sure that the load balancing from API management and the configuration that we set is working correctly. So if I click here, I can see that the first request went to France, the others UK and Sweden. A simple way to leverage this kind of labs and in a development environment, making sure that the configuration that we have is the right one to push to production. And then we have this semantic caching policy that is in preview. And in this one, I will send different prompts, random prompts, and you can see here that the meaning of the prompt is the same. They always ask for the time, but it's written in different way. Okay, so with the typical cache policy, this will not be a cache hit because they are different questions. But with the semantic caching capability, the embeddings will say that this is the same question. And if we click here, play, we will say that the first request will take some time, and then the subsequent ones should be pretty fast because it will be a cache hit from API management, and we'll have a fast response. So we see here like a response with seconds, and now we have milliseconds response for the additional requests. Okay. Again, we can see here from the semantic caching performance, then plotting the results to see the way that this works. So the last one is the GPT-4o. Okay, as we know, GPT-4o introduces a multimodal approach by setting not only text but images, audio, and video, and there is extending capabilities of Azure API management to support GPT-4o. For now, there are some limitations, but we can also already test cool stuff like sending images through Azure API management and having the response from GPT-4o. And in this case, to make a little bit fun, and since we are in talking about integration and about REST APIs, I'm sending this meme, and I will ask through API management GPT-4o to interpret this meme. So I will send the request. As I can see here, I'm sending a base 64 encoding of the image, and then GPT-4o can interpret the meme, can understand that the REST, in this case, it's a REST API, and explains the humor. So all these labs, they are available here in this repo. Okay, the link will be provided, and there are much other labs that you can test out, just for you to fine-tune the policies, to experiment the Gen AI capabilities, and to configure those capabilities to your use case, and then to roll out confidently into production. That's all from my side. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Alexandre. There was a comment about your T-shirt. So you've got fans of your T-shirt with the API Management and Azure logos. So
Yeah, I need to talk with Martin to give away these T-shirts to everyone.
yeah, maybe next time we can give it away to the participants. All right, back to you, Andrei.
Yeah, so just quick one. We have a lot of resources for you to get started with Azure API Management and OpenAI. So we have a separate documentation section fully dedicated to new policies, to GenAI gateway capabilities in Azure API Management. As Alexandre shared already, there is a great repo containing all of the GenAI gateway labs if you want to get started, if you want to try those policies in action with Python notebooks. We also have a lot of guidance on productizing your intelligent application. So we have a set of building blocks that explain kind of best practices on how to do load balancing, how to do rack patterns, and like different scenarios and architectures for intelligent applications, as long as the GenAI, as well as a GenAI gateway accelerator, which describes kind of overall architecture and provides a lot of bicep templates for you to get started with your intelligent applications. We also have separate guides as presented on the slide, and if you want to just try with a simple chat application, there is a sample on how to do that with Azure OpenAI and APIM sample in the APM/GenAI sample app repo. So yeah, with that, back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Alexandre and Andrei. Great presentation, great demo. So please check out all the links. Very cool stuff using API management for GenAI scenarios. A lot of benefits, and we are still working on that area, so you can expect more to come as well. And I'd like to bring Fernando to the stage to briefly talk about STV1 to STV2 migration. Fernando?
Thank you, Mike. Yes, let's talk about this. Yeah, so very shortly, as we are introducing new features and improving the platform going forward, there are also some things that we're retiring. And one of the biggest retirements that we're doing is what we call STV1 instances. So basically, STV1 instances is what we call single tenant version 1. This is a service that is running in a platform that we call cloud services. This retirement was announced 2 years ago, and all API management instances running on STV1 need to be migrated by August 31st, 2024. So just to clarify, STV1 is what you need to migrate, and we have another compute platform called STV2, which has all the features, complete parity, and even has more features like private endpoints, availability zones, and denial of service protection. So please, just a reminder, if you're running on the STV1 platform, and if you don't know if you do, please check out this link where you can see if you have any STV1 instances running around, how to migrate them, and hopefully you can do it before August 31st. And just to be sure, STV2 does not refer to basic V2 and standard V2. We understand that there's some confusion around it, but we hope that this will go away pretty soon. So please, don't forget to migrate all of your STV1 instances.
All right. Is that all from your side, Fernando?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And we will start wrapping up our live stream. But before we get to the Q&A session, please help us shape the exciting future of API gateways. There is a survey that you can fill out to participate in our study around API gateways. We'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to get your opinions, and we'd like to better understand your usage, scenarios, patterns, scale, and more for API gateways. So please take a moment to fill out the survey and provide us with your feedback. I'll also paste the link in the comments in a second. Other than that, stay tuned for our next live stream that's coming probably in the fall, in a couple of months or so. we'll dive deeper into workspaces, cover the other half of API security that we did not cover today, which is a deep dive into Defender for APIs and all the exciting features they offer for runtime threat analysis, detection, prioritization, more, and cover any other upcoming or recently released features and updates to our products. You can monitor our blogs using this link on the screen, aka.ms/apim/blogs, for live updates, live stream announcements, and updates on our features and tips and tricks and best practices content. So stay tuned for our live stream and announcements. And speaking of workspaces, there was a question brought up by Oliver. Are there any news regarding the pricing of workspaces and when shared gateways will be available? So we hinted at it in the last community stand-up, and we are working hard on releasing that functionality to you. It's coming within a few weeks, even as early as next week, depending on certain dependencies internally at Microsoft. So we'll be very soon announcing the runtimeization for workspaces, along with comprehensive documentation, along with a comprehensive blog post and pricing page updates. So all of this will be coming very, very soon. So keep an eye out for that. And like I said, you can monitor it on apim/blogs at aka.ms. And we are excited to make this feature available to you and make it generally available. So it's no longer going to be preview, to be GA, ready for production use, left and right. And with that, please take a moment to provide the feedback on this community stand-up so we can improve how we organize those stand-ups and make sure that we deliver the value to you. And there is a very short survey. You can scan the QR code, or you can check the link, tap the link in your browser. We would love to hear your feedback, and that's the only way we can actually improve those stand-ups and live streams. And with that, I would like to open it up for questions. Please keep them coming in the chat. We've already responded to some questions in the written form, but we are also happy to take them live. There is a question about API Center. We no longer have Julia with us, but will the API Center extension be available in Visual Studio 2022? Shrikant, do you have any opinions on that? You went live?
For Visual Studio 2022, right now it's not in the immediate plans, but something that we are considering, definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. Fernando, there was a question about logging for send request policy. I'm not sure if we covered it.
Yes. So yeah, right now the information around send request is only available in the tracing for debugging the API request. You can get information, but this is something that we can consider going into the future.
Fantastic. Another question, as for API management, is it possible to increase the max total request duration from 30 seconds to unlimited in the new model, as it is the case now with the classic model? And there is a justification. In our case, we use it for some synchronous tasks, so it would limit us when migrating. I'm not sure if the new model versus old model refers to SKU-v1 versus v2 or STV1 versus STV2.
Is this referring to the send request policy also? 30 seconds. I think, yeah, if you can comment a little bit more, Jorge, if you want to increase the total request duration in the send request policy?
Yeah, basically, is it send request or is it just a regular API operation through forward request policy?
So if this is, he also mentions migrating. So if this is the case from STB1 to STB2, then it should be completely possible. There's full parity between STB1 and STB2, but please confirm, Jorge, if you're talking about STB1 to STB2 or send request policy. Yeah, that would be good to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, V1 to V2 tiers. Got it. So in the case from V1 to V2 tiers, this should not be a problem. Yeah. In the case of timeout, we should have the same. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So based on the documentation I'm looking at, there is a maximum total request duration is documented at 30 seconds. So maybe we can investigate that and get back to you somehow. All right, so we'll follow up. Jorge, Jorge, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. If you can tell us how to reach you, that would be great. Otherwise, you can send an email to, let's say, mike.budzynski@microsoft.com. So my first name dot my last name @microsoft.com, and we'll be happy to reply. On to the next question for Andrei. How do you handle field resolver conflicts on synthetic GraphQL APIs?
Yeah, for that, I need to take a look at the actual implementation. But as far as I remember, we just take the latest response from the API and we use it for forming the request on the GraphQL side.
All right. Any more questions? Well, we'll give it 1 more minute, and if there is no more questions, we'll just conclude the live stream. There is a clarification for a GraphQL question. Andrei?
If you have field resolver for endpoint returns a field of type A, and then your resolver type A, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if you are in a situation where there are multiple resolvers involved in a specific GraphQL request, whatever comes later will be used in the response. But I need to double check the implementation, so it might not be 100% accurate.
Right. No more questions. So thank you very much for participating in this call, and we look forward to having you again in a couple of months in our next stand-up. So great to have you here, and I'll be happy to see you again. Thank you very much.